How are you, Mr. Doug?
I'm doing well on this fine Thursday evening.
So we've got a pretty cool show planned for you tonight. And basically what we're doing here is we are going to begin our own Hall of Fame. We kind of alluded to it one of our previous shows on who we have already put in there, but we have actually put together a few videos to actually induct the guys in. And the short of it is we are going to be bringing in some new ones. Now you've got the Pete Rose, you've got the Shoeless Joe Jackson, and then Doug is inducting one. I'm inducting a couple, and then we've also put it up in the poll in the chat. We're going to leave that up throughout the night and then find out who the winner is. We've also got some polls that are going on in different radio stations that are carrying us, and basically we're going to accumulate them. And you see the folks that are the options for the voting. And what you have here is you have Jeff Kent, Kurt Schilling, Louis Tiant, and David Cohn. And Doug and I aren't going to really speak on those guys tonight because I don't want to feel like that I'm influencing anyone in any way. I want to get a true litmus test of the listening audience, the viewing audience, whether you're catching us on radio, whether you are doing any way that you want to consume this. I don't want to be one of the ones that are saying, hey, vote this way or don't vote that way kind of thing. So we put that aside. The first one that I want to get to, Doug, is we've got a couple of guys that we've already put in, because we did the Once Upon a Pastime series on Pete Rose. If you didn't catch that, a lot of folks enjoyed it. I appreciate people sending us kind words on social media and whatnot on how much that they enjoyed the Pete Rose one. It is still on our channel. We're going to end up putting these in. I believe it's already in the Play Ball channel. We're going to eventually make one that's a Once Upon a Pastime, so it's a little more organized. I can't remember if it's actually called Once Upon a Pastime or not yet. But anyways, it's the Pete Rose one. So we got Pete Rose and we went Shoeless Joe Jackson. So what I want to do on this first one, we want to go ahead and bring in our first inductee into the Braves Country Radio Hall of Fame. We think it's just been ridiculous. It's been too long. We're not going to wait on these jackasses at the BBWA to finally vote these guys in. I think, and it's not all their fault because their hands are tied, but there are guys that we're going to put in tonight that their hands were not tied. So here's the first one on Shoeless Joe Jackson, our first inductee, because if you're going to put Pete Rose in, you got to put in Shoeless Joe. Joseph Jefferson Jackson, better known as Shoeless Joe, was born on July 16th, 1887, and died December 5th, 1951. Shoeless Joe's .356 batting average for his career is the third highest in Major League Baseball history, surpassed only by Roger Hornsby and Ty Cobb. He made his Major League debut on August 25th, 1908 for the Philadelphia Athletics. From 1908 to 1910, Shoeless Joe appeared in just 30 ball games, amassing just 127 plate appearances. So in 1911, with the Cleveland Naps, he was still considered with rookie status, hitting .408 in 147 games, an all-time rookie record. Shoeless Joe's scar on the game took place in the 1919 World Series, where he and 7 other teammates were accused of throwing the World Series against the Cincinnati Redlegs. Just over a year later, in 1920, Shoeless Joe was banned from Major League Baseball by Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the Major League Baseball commissioner, for life. For the record, in that 1919 World Series, Shoeless Joe had 12 base hits, a World Series record, a .375 batting average, and there has been much debate on whether Shoeless Joe actually helped throw the 1919 World Series. Shoeless is in the Cleveland Guardians Baseball Hall of Fame, ranked number 35 by Sporting News on the All-Century team in 1999. Bill James ranked Shoeless Joe 33rd all-time in baseball history. He had a 940 OPS and a 62.2 WAR in just 10 years of full service. Shoeless Joe won the World Series in 1917, and Babe Ruth modeled his swing after the great Shoeless Joe Jackson. Many that saw him play called Shoeless Joe Jackson the greatest hitter they had ever seen. Joseph Jeffrey Jackson, Shoeless Joe, is the first inductee in the Braves Country Radio Hall of Fame. All right, so there you have that, the Shoeless Joe Jackson one. Let me go ahead and remove this out of the way. Doug, I just want to get your thoughts on Shoeless Joe as we are putting him in our Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, definitely one of the greatest of all time. And I just wanted to add to that, I think he was banned. He was the reason that he was singled out to in court too, if you read, is the fact that I don't think he threw the game. Every stat that you just showed tells you that he didn't. What his mistake was, and I believe he knew that the others were cheating, and he didn't say anything about it. He didn't come forward and report it.
Right. And look, I can't argue on the fact that that's not a thing. Do you think that should exclude him from it?
No, I don't think it should exclude him. Like I said, it was a scapegoat. They had an excuse to put him as part of it, and they did it. And it was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, they so, you know, and the funny thing about it is that Shoeless Joe didn't have the longest career. So you do wonder what his batting average would have actually been had he had 5 to 7 more years left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is one pushback on it, and I get that part of it. But at the same token, you know, I just feel like that if he doesn't get in, who the hell does? What say you?
I agree, because there's a lot of metrics for that generation that we're not seeing. I always thought, from what I had to read about it and what was covered for him on the field, that he was always the prototype of what he now set as a standard for an outfielder to be. From the power hitting to the strength in his arm, every bit of athletics that goes in being what a consummate baseball player, whether it be in that generation or even in this generation, because I fully believe that if he was alive today, he would be one of the best baseball players in Major League Baseball today as well. That's why he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Did you watch the 8 Men Out movie? And if so, what did you think of it?
Oh, I love that movie. I remember when it first came out. Yeah, I love that movie. I thought that it came from, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it came from a book. The movie was based on I can't remember the guy's name's book. I thought they did a very good job. And one of the things I liked about the movie with Shoeless, with Joe, is the fact that I think another reason that people jumped on him is he was popular. I mean, he was kind of a man of the people kind of person. I mean, he frequented restaurants, and he was very accessible to the public, and to the city of Chicago as well. Kids looked up to him. He was always walking up and down the street when he wasn't playing ball, signing autographs. He was known to stop and play stick games with kids that were playing in the street. And he was a true icon in Chicago, and people loved him to death. That the fact that he was even accused, the legend is, and I think they showed it in the movie, some one kid came up to him and goes, "Say it ain't Joe. Say it ain't so."
Right.
So, and that's the aspect of the movie.
Debated whether or not that was ever said, but if you've ever heard the term "say it ain't so, Joe," or just the term "say it ain't so," it comes from that. Supposedly, it was Joe Jackson coming out of the courthouse after the
Exactly.
Verdict was in of him and the other 7 White Sox being found guilty, and getting kicked out of the league, even though they were not convicted in a court of law. They were being sentenced by Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis. And supposedly that's where it came from. A reporter ran with it. The reporter, from everyone's, I hate to even say this because it's such a great legend, but evidently the whole thing is horse crap. It never happened, right? But I like to believe that it did, so I'm going with that story.
I know, I do too.
So
now another thing that people don't realize, and the movie did catch, I liked how they did it, was if you look at the guys that basically go on trial, it hurts him the worst because he's the most pure baseball player of that group. You have to remember the other guys, they did other professions in life. One was an electrician, one was a doctor. They had other things they could do. They were playing baseball more because it was something that they could do. So what I like about Joe and why he definitely believes is he was a true baseball player. That's what he was born to do. That's what he was doing. That's all he had, and all he knew how to do. That's what makes it a tragedy.
We do have a question here. Why was he called Shoeless Joe Jackson? He gave an interview in Sport Magazine, and according to him, it's been well documented, but his story on how it actually happened, it's pretty much every story that was ever been told, is that Shoeless Joe, when he was playing during a mill game, and that was back when teams were assembled for if you were playing for your mill, you're playing for a warehouse, they all had teams throughout the country. So he was playing for the local mill, and he got blisters on his feet during the game and tossed his shoes, and the rest of the game he played in just his sock feet. He eventually ended up taking the socks off because his socks got soggy, etc. And so he just played with no shoes, no socks. And he said this was one of his teammates yelled at, "You shoeless son of a gun, you," after he made a big hit in the game. He couldn't quite remember it, but he believes it was a double. But anyways, after that, the Shoeless Joe stuck with him all the way as he went into the major league. So some people have mischaracterized it as it was a nickname he got playing without shoes while he was in professional baseball. It was actually when he was in Greenville, South Carolina, which is where he was eventually, that's where he was laid to rest. He was born in Pickens County, South Carolina, which wasn't too far away. All right, so the next one on the list, this one is very near and dear to not only Doug but a lot of people's hearts who grew up watching this man play. It is Pete Rose. He is the next one inducted into the Braves Country Radio Hall of Fame. Peter Edward Rose Sr., born April 14th, 1941, died September 30th, 2024, nicknamed Charlie Hustle, is the all-time Major League Baseball hit king, with 4,256 hits. He had a .303 batting average and a 79.5 WAR over 24 seasons in Major League Baseball. Rose, 784 OPS, 17 All-Star games, the 1981 Silver Slugger. He was also the 1973 National League MVP. Rose won the World Series MVP in 1975 as a part of the Big Red Machine that won back-to-back championships for Cincinnati in 75 and 76. Pete Rose would go on to win his third World Series with the Philadelphia Phillies in 1980. He was a three-time National League batting champ in 1968, 1969, and 1973. Rose was inducted into the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame, and his number 14 has been retired for the Cincinnati Reds. In 1978, Pete Rose began a 44-game hitting streak on June 14th in the first inning off Cubs pitcher Dave Roberts. Rose would proceed to get a hit in every game he played until August 1st, making a serious run at Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, which had been virtually unchallenged for 37 years. And on September 11th, 1985, Pete Rose broke Ty Cobb's all-time hit record with his 4,192nd hit to left center field off San Diego Padres pitcher Eric Schau. On November 11th, 1986, Pete Rose was dropped from the Reds' 40-man roster to make room for pitcher Pat Paseo, and he unofficially retired as a Major League Baseball player. Pete Rose would remain the Cincinnati Reds manager until August 24th, 1989, with a record of 426 wins, 388 losses. Pete Rose endured a 30-day suspension on April 30th, 1988, in a game against the New York Metropolitans. After a controversial call, Pete Rose shoved umpire Dave Pallone twice and knocking him back several feet. The 30-day suspension from National League President Bartlett Giamatti remains the longest suspension levied against a manager for an on-field incident. On February 1989, Giamatti and Commissioner of Baseball Peter Ueberroth, with lawyers present, stated that Pete Rose had bet on football, basketball, and horse racing, but he had vehemently denied allegations of betting on baseball. Rose later on would admit to betting on baseball and denied betting on the Cincinnati Reds, which later was revealed to be false. On August 24th, 1989, Pete Rose voluntarily accepted a permanent place on the baseball's ineligible list. He stated till the day that he died that he believed he was going to be removed from the list after a year or so from Giamatti's order. Bart Giamatti died of a heart attack on September 1st, 1989, just 1 week after the ban was imposed. Pete Rose endured a 35-year ban until he was laid to rest in 2024. Charlie Hustle, looked upon as one of the greatest hitters and competitors of his era, continues to be a fan favorite. After enduring an expulsion that we believe is way too long, today we welcome in Peter Edward Rose, Charlie Hustle, to the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame. It is well overdue. All right, so Doug, I am going to give you the stage as I remove the video. I'm going to give you the stage, you being our resident Cincinnati Reds fan, and you grew up in that era watching Pete Rose. Would you say that he's your favorite of all time, or were you more partial to one of the others in the Big Red Machine? I don't think we've ever had that conversation.
I loved him. Don't get me wrong. I mean, right. I was always a bigger Joe Morgan fan.
Okay,
to be honest with you. But no, I growing up, I idolized the man just like millions of other Cincinnati. Watching him play baseball was just, it was kind of like watching a symphony of success with him. It was just, if you wanted to be a baseball player, that's how you played baseball. You know, being called Charlie Hustle was originally an insult, but it was the perfect insult. Because if that's an insult, I'll take that insult all day.
Right.
Yeah, he just epitomized to me, that's how you play. You know, I hate to repeat myself, but that's how you play baseball. You play with that hustle, that heart, and never quit attitude. And I really, that's truly who he was on the field. There, you know, not much more said besides the records that he set and the championships that he won.
I guess growing up, and though I wasn't a Reds fan, and I missed the Big Red Machine, they were fading as I was coming into watching baseball, right? But I was going off of stories of my grandfathers who were big baseball fans, and they always talked about Johnny Bench. So that's who I looked at. And he was still playing when I first started watching. He was at the end of his career. He's not who he used to be. So I'd say that was probably my favorite Cincinnati Red. I didn't know Pete Rose as a Red until he came back around and was the manager, and little did we know he was doing all the illegal stuff that has kept him out of the Hall of Fame. But just to give people an idea, look, we laid it out in the video, but I want to throw that out again. 17-time All-Star, right? He was the MVP of the World Series in 75. He was the MVP of the league. I believe that was 73. I don't have it jotted down, but I think off of memory that's what it was. And then he was NL batting champion 3 times, 68, 69, and 73. And we've talked about this enough where I don't have to keep beating the dead horse, but I'm just going to lay it out there. With him and Shoeless Joe Jackson, they've done their time. Enough is enough. My God, does another generation have to pass away not seeing Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson in the Hall of Fame? That's just it. With these clowns, these knuckleheads, these writers, these people, and I'm not saying all the writers, but I'm saying the ones that don't get it, because they are a little spoiled in the fact of their everyday life. They get to go to a ballpark, cover the team, write about the team, go behind the scenes in the locker room and interview them and whatnot. Not that that's not hard work, but they're a little skewed in the idea of not realizing how lucky they are. And the fan who goes out there and pays to do the same thing, obviously they don't go in the locker room, but they pay to go watch the game every day, or they sit at home and they're too far away from the stadium, but they pay for the MLB ticket. You're cheating every one of those damn people, every single one of them. And even the ones that didn't grow up in the Pete Rose era, a baseball kid today, I'm talking about one that would be in their 20s, right? They would get something out of that. They would absolutely get something out of that. Major League Baseball would get something out of it. Everybody would benefit for Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson to go into the Hall of Fame. And that's just where I'll leave it. Do you have anything else to add on that?
You know, and this goes between Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe as well. I was sitting before Game On, and I thought of one of the great Hall of Famers in Ty Cobb. And if you know anything about Ty Cobb, you know what an evil, burning pile of garbage he was as a human being.
Right.
And you let him into the Hall of Fame with all the rules he broke and as much damage as he did as a human being. But we can't forgive these two guys and put them in for what they've done, for what they've accomplished.
Right.
I think that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, and the thing is, I've never heard the argument that it's because that they don't think they were good people. First of all, I don't know how good of a person Pete Rose was, considering some of the things that have been written about him. But Shoeless Joe, from everything that I've seen, he was a bumpkin that got caught up in something he didn't know what to do, and he didn't want to be a snitch, so he went along with the ride, even though I don't believe that he ever did anything to actually throw the game, right? But the idea that would be a reason to leave someone out is that you didn't like their personality is asinine, right?
Exactly. I'm only using the person, with the Ty Cobb thing, because Ty Cobb was a very bad person. It's just the fact that how bad did what Shoeless Joe did to keep him out of the Hall of Fame? It's nothing. Pete Rose, it's 50 years since he bet on stuff. I get it. It's over with. It's not something so horrible that we shouldn't be able to say his name for some reason.
And the thing about the Cobb thing is, I would challenge people to do some reading on Ty Cobb. There are a lot of reports that conflict what we were told 30 years ago about Ty Cobb. What was it, 25 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood, when the Tommy Lee Jones movie Ty Cobb came out, and we were given a portrayal of that he was just this terrible racist. There's been a lot of stuff to refute that since then. I don't know. I wasn't there one way or the other, right? But just like you had plenty of racists in the leagues that came well before us, you probably have some now, okay? And don't think you didn't have racists in the Negro leagues. Don't think you didn't have racists in all these leagues. So that's not a reason for me to hold someone against, because what I'm looking at is what they did on the field, because who they were as people. Look, there's a lot of talk that Josh Gibson wasn't a very good person. I don't know. How the hell do I know? I wasn't there, and I can't go off of it, because here's the thing. Back then, there was an unwritten rule that you didn't write certain things about players, and it
Right.
didn't matter if they were in the Negro Leagues, if they were in the major leagues, whatever league they were in, the PCL, it did not matter. You kept their personal life out, and that was a code. Nowadays, it's the exact opposite. They go diving in, anything they could find, clickbait city. And so I'll never hold that against anybody, because I don't know who you were, because you were dead before I ever met you, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, if we went down that rabbit hole, then we're tearing down statues and all that nonsense. So anyways, let's move on to the next one, because we're going to run short on time here. The number 3 guy the third guy that we were putting into the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame is a guy, this is overdue in my opinion. So just like you grew up and one of your heroes was Pete Rose. Obviously you said Joe Morgan, but he's already in the Hall of Fame. This is a guy that I think it is absolutely asinine that he is not in. Now, all these videos that we're playing, I will tell you this weekend, I'm going to put them up individually on our YouTube channel here on Braves Country Radio. So if you want to go back and watch the videos individually, you'll be able to do that. We just didn't want to drop them before we did the show, because it kind of lets the cat out of the bag. So here's number 3 on, I mean, you could almost call it, it's about damn time the man belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I don't understand why he's not. Dale Brian Murphy, born March 12th, 1956, in Portland, Oregon, is our 3rd inductee into the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame. Dale Murphy made his major league debut for the Atlanta Braves on September 13th, 1976. He last appeared in Major League Baseball May 21st, 1993 for the Colorado Rockies. Dale finished with 398 home runs, 1,266 RBI. He played for the Atlanta Braves from 1976 to 1990. The Philadelphia Phillies from 1990 after his trade from Atlanta to 1992. And the Colorado Rockies in his final season in 1993. Dale Murphy in 1980 and 1982 through 1987 was a 7-time All-Star. He was a back-to-back National League MVP in 1982 and 1983, winning 5 consecutive Gold Glove Awards from 1982 to 1986, and a 4-time Silver Slugger Award, winning all of them consecutively from 1982 to 1985. Dale Murphy also won the Roberto Clemente Award in 1988. It is given annually in Major League Baseball to the player who best exemplifies the game of baseball, sportsmanship, and community. Dale Murphy led the National League in home runs. In 1984 and 1985, he was the National League RBI leader in 1982 and 1983, and his number 3 has been retired by the Atlanta Braves organization. He was inducted into the Atlanta Braves Hall of Fame in the year 2000 and is also a member of the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame, Georgia Sports Hall of Fame, and World Sports Humanitarian Hall of Fame. Dale Murphy broke into the major leagues in 1976, playing just 19 games, all at the catcher position. He would continue to play for the Braves in the infield, mainly at first base, until 1980 when he would switch to the outfield and become a Gold Glove center fielder. Though beginning in left field, he quickly switched to center field and dominated the position. Dale Murphy's 46.5 WAR was mostly accumulated in the 1980s with the Atlanta Braves. Outside of the 1980s, his WAR was just 0.1. From 1982 to 1987, he built a WAR of 34. In his 82 and 83 National League MVP seasons, Dale Murphy hit 72 home runs and 230 RBI. Dale Murphy had the most home runs and RBI in the 1980s in the National League. A degenerative arthritic knee condition halted Dale Murphy's production after the 1988 season. leaving him hobbling from 1989 to 1993. Though Dale Murphy's dominance was in a small era of time in the 1980s, he helped build the Atlanta Braves as America's team on the Superstation on TBS as a nationwide brand. Beloved by his fans who remember the glory days of Dale Murphy and his Atlanta Braves, and Murphy's dominance all through the 1980s makes Dale Bryan Murphy the third inductee into the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame. So there you have Dale Murphy, and he was absolutely my idol growing up. When it comes to baseball watching, and I've talked about this millions of times, but I grew up in an era where Dale Murphy was on your TV at night. He was on your TV all throughout the summer, and I was a Dale Murphy guy in the summer. I was a Dan Marino guy in the fall, and that was my childhood. And if you had to ask me back then, and I'll still tell you to this day, Dale Murphy was a bigger deal to me than Dan Marino, and for the number one reason is you saw the guy every day, right? And the guy, you talk about a guy that is an absolute hero to many in Braves country. One of the biggest reasons was it wasn't just the fact, it had a lot to do with it, but the back-to-back MVPs was a big deal. But he was coming on and really taking off as TBS was starting to make the Braves America's team, right? And so he was the one star you could always count on. I was a big Bob Horner fan. There was a bunch of guys that I grew up watching in the 80s that I realize now weren't any good, but I thought they were at the time. Chris Chambliss at the end of his career. Bruce Bennett. I was a big Rafael Ramirez fan. Claudel Washington. But I didn't realize when I was a kid, these guys are at the end of their damn rope, and we were just picking up scraps trying to compete. Dale Murphy still outshined them all. If it wasn't for his knee injury, I believe his condition, I guess you call it, because it wasn't a full-blown like torn ACL. It was a arthritic knee is what gave into him. If it wasn't for that, he probably ends up with somewhere around 500 home runs, right? But he tried, and I really wish he just would have shut it down looking back at it, because I think he is penalized for a couple of things. A, he left in 93, tried to play one more year with Colorado, didn't have anything in the tank, right? Said goodbye. But when he extends those years, it makes his numbers look smaller because, oh, well, he didn't really, but nobody did. No one had a better 1980s than Dale Murphy. And as he was retiring and going towards the end, all of a sudden these enormous numbers start showing up. And Dale Murphy wasn't a steroid guy. And I think that hurt him big time, because when he gets eligible for the Hall of Fame in 98, would have been the first year, right? That was the year that freaking McGuire and Sosa were slamming the ball out of the freaking yards, going 70, and what was it, 66?
Mm-hmm. Yes, 66.
He was killed by that, because the year that he becomes eligible for the Hall of Fame, or maybe it was the year before, but regardless, it's in that era. Because I can't remember if he was 97 or 98. But when he became of that ilk, the numbers had already started to take off by like 96, right? And so he's being compared to, well, if this is what McGuire's going to do over X amount of years, this is what Bonds will do after X amount of years. We can't vote Murphy in. That's just, he only ended up with 398. And I do think he held on because he was trying to get to 400, but his knees just gave out.
Yep.
But people are going to remember more towards the end if they're just growing up and whatnot, or becoming baseball writers. They're looking at the end where he ends up with the Phillies, and he was a shadow of his former self, right? And then by the time he ends up in Colorado, he's cooked. He shouldn't have even been in the league, but he was still a draw. What say you?
I agree with that. The interesting thing for me, I remember him. It was kind of funny. I remember him thinking this guy is going to be a failed player. I remember when he first came to the Braves, when I first noticed him, he was a catcher. And I remember watching a game he was playing in. And at the time, I think for some reason, Johnny Bench made a commentary about him and said he's no good as a catcher. He's got what's called plate block, which is something catchers get and sometimes people playing first base get. They cannot, if they play those specific positions, they can't throw the ball correctly. I don't understand it. It's just something that happens with certain ball players. It's why he failed as a catcher. His first season, he had more. Then they switch him to the first base. He has the most errors by a first baseman since 1919. And I was kind of looking at him going, I like you. You hit well because you were hitting 321. It's the only reason you're still on the team. But I was kind of worried about him. Then I kind of turned away from the Braves. That's when Joe Torre comes in. They bring in Shoeless, who you mentioned earlier, to play first. So they're like, well, where are we going to put him? He puts him in center field, and then all of a sudden I turn around and watch him again because I watched him when he first played center base. And you just watch this Hall of Famer just blossom out of, to me, it seemed out of nowhere at the time. And after that, and you mentioned, I was watching him on TBS. Like when the Reds would play the Braves. That's when I got to see him a lot. That's when I would watch a lot. And I became a fan. I didn't care about the Braves. I didn't care about TBS, but I cared about Dale Murphy because it was a pleasure to watch him play baseball. And because I'd follow him when he played and didn't play that well, and to see him turn into what he turned into, it was just, I was enamored. And even growing up in North Carolina, you could walk around when he became what he became. There were people walking around with Murphy jerseys up in North Carolina. So the impact he was having immediately once he started playing center field, to me personally, I can't describe that. Just the instant impact when he played center field, how that just opened up everything for him. The lights turned on, and the rest is history.
Yeah, he was. So he's one of, I believe it's 22, maybe it's 24, who were in the Atlanta Braves Hall of Fame that are not in the actual Hall of Fame, in the National Baseball Hall of Fame, but they're not all players. And maybe we'll do a show on that sometime. But Dale Murphy, to me, man, the guy carried a decade on television as the star of the sport. Maybe not the only star, but he was definitely one of the biggest stars of the sport. And he did it for a team that, let's be honest, for most of the decade wasn't very good. But he was the reason why, along with the easy access to TBS throughout the cable networks, but he was the reason why Braves country grew with legions of fans, because you had something to watch every night. If it wasn't for Murphy, a lot of those other names came and gone. Some of the names that I've already brought up, but like the Bob Horners and whatnot, they would have spiked years and then they would disappear, right? But Murphy was there for a long time, and it wasn't just the offense. He won the Gold Gloves. He was in the All-Star games. This wasn't just some player that you're like, well, he wouldn't have started for anybody else. He was the guy for a good, we'll say 6-7 years. And I think that alone puts him in the Hall of Fame. I think he eventually gets in with the Veterans Committees, but it's long overdue. This is a guy that was penalized because he wasn't on steroids. That's what it all comes down to.
Exactly. I mean, if you want to look at it this way with him, is in that time period, to me, Dale Murphy, he was the Atlanta Braves. He carried that team. To me, just the way I saw the game, he kind of carried that team on his back in those years. I mean, I might not be the greatest Braves fan or anything, but outside of Dale Murphy watching on TBS, I can't think of other players right off the top of my head. You would have to remind me of other players.
Right.
I was just there for him. And to give you, I just want to give people perspective on how good his glove was as a center fielder. He won 10 golden gloves. There are only two, to give you an idea, only Willie Mays and Roberto Clemente have more than 10 golden gloves at that position. Just to give you a perspective on how good of a defensive player he was.
Yeah, Dale Murphy, and of course, because he was an ex-catcher, he had a cannon for an arm.
Yes.
and he was a very good base runner until the knees started giving out.
Mhm.
But he was what people call today a 5-tool player.
Yes.
And he did it in a lineup where he wasn't well protected for most of his career. He was usually the guy that was protecting someone else. So there you have that. We got to move this along because we're going to run out of time. Okay. But here is number 4 on the list, and then we're going to do the one that Doug suggested as this Once Upon a Pastime series. If you're just joining us, you want to rewind or whatever, we are creating our own Hall of Fame. It's a virtual Hall of Fame, and we'll be putting these videos up individually in a section on our channel. Here is number 4 on our list, and he's one of my favorite of all time. Andrew Rudolph Jones, born April 23rd, 1977 in Wilmestad, Curacao, is our 4th inductee into the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame. Andrew Jones finished with a WAR of 62.7, 434 home runs, 10 consecutive Gold Gloves, 5 consecutive All-Star games, 1,289 RBI, 1,204 runs scored. Andrew Jones played 17 seasons in Major League Baseball, though his most prolific years were with the Atlanta Braves from 1996 to 2007. Jones made his Major League debut during the 1996 season with the Atlanta Braves. In the 1996 World Series, he became the youngest player to ever hit a home run in the postseason, and just the second player to ever homer in his first 2 World Series at-bats. The following season, Andrew Jones finished 5th in Rookie of the Year voting. Andrew Jones was a 5-time All-Star from the years 2000 to 2006. He won the Silver Slugger Award in 2005 when he posted 51 home runs and 128 RBI. He would follow that up in 2006 with 41 home runs and 129 RBI. And in 2007, his final year with the Atlanta Braves, 26 home runs and 94 RBI. Willie Mays said that he was the best defensive center fielder that he had ever seen. In the 2005 season, where he led the National League with 51 home runs and 128 RBI, along with his Gold Glove, he finished second to Albert Pujols for the NL MVP, still debated to this day. After Andrew Jones left the city of Atlanta, his offensive production began to drop, going from the Los Angeles Dodgers to the Texas Rangers, Chicago White Sox, and finally finishing up in Major League Baseball with the New York Yankees in 2012. From 1998 to 2007, Andrew Jones won 10 consecutive Gold Glove awards while compiling 345 home runs and 1,034 RBI. After Atlanta from 2007 to 2012, Andrew Jones hit just 66 home runs and 171 RBI. The alarming contrast between the two halves of his career, his last 6 years with such meager production, has had several voters hesitate to put him into the Hall of Fame. We've made the argument here on Braves Country Radio that Andrew Jones should not be held out of the Hall of Fame because of his final years, instead celebrated for the bulk of his career in his prime in an Atlanta Braves uniform. The greatest defensive center fielder to put on a major league uniform in that 10-year span, along with his outstanding offensive production, has allowed us to go forward and welcome in Andrew Jones, the glove where singles would go to die, into the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame. And I'm gonna have to put a muzzle on you or something. Your damn smoker's cough. I keep thinking it's gonna mute when I put the video on, and I can hear you hacking up a lung.
I'll be muting it myself from now on.
By the way, I didn't want to step on what you were saying, but Dale Murphy won 5 Gold Gloves. They were all in a row. Yes. Andrew Jones won the 10, which I think I know why you mixed up.
I had that backwards. Never mind. Sorry.
I kind of figured what happened because I gave you Andrew Jones and Dale Murphy to study, so I get it.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure that the listener understands what's going on.
Right.
And you know, one thing about that is to remember one of the seasons which was taken away from Dale Murphy was the 81 season where they had the weird strike. And so in that run from 80 to 87, that was the only year that he didn't go to the All-Star game. And that had a lot to do with it because he had only been once. He was a flash in the pan, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, let's talk about Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones, look, I wrote the poem last year, and we're probably going to end it today with that as we fade away. If y'all haven't seen that, we will finish the show today on Where Singles Go to Die. But the guy, I get why why there's pushback, because when you take him out of the city of Atlanta, you take him out of his career in Atlanta, it's not impressive. So when he leaves, I get the entire pushback. But I will just say this: the man hit 434 home runs when it's all said and done. He had almost 1,300 RBIs when it's all said and done. And he was a guy that, by Willie Mays himself and several others, said that he was the greatest defensive center fielder they'd ever seen. And I believe that that was true. I would say you take that away when he leaves Atlanta, because he had such a spotty offensive career when he left Atlanta, and he really lost a lot of playing time. You can't put him in that same ilk. But nonetheless, when he was in Atlanta from 96 to 2006, I'd never seen anything before that. I haven't seen anything since where the guy played so damn shallow. He dared you to hit it over his head, and you rarely could. It had to be a rocket off the bat. What say you?
I absolutely agree. And the thing that when you look at Andrew Jones, and I think this may be one of the reasons that he isn't already in the Hall of Fame, you have to look at him and look at what he didn't let happen defensively. And it's a stat that they've only recently started collating, which is a defensive WAR score.
Right.
And if you go by that metric, which I think you should, in watching Andrew Jones, that's what I watched about him. How many home runs he didn't let happen. How many doubles, triples with his arm he didn't let happen. That's why Willie Mays says that he's the best defensive center fielder ever.
If you ask three of the best pitchers to ever play the game, Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddox, you ask them about him, they always talked about, man, I didn't have anything to worry about because I knew who was standing behind me. And so it kind of lent to the feeling of you can try to push the envelope as a pitcher because of who you have standing back there in center field at number 25. And offensively, I get it. He fell off the face of the earth when he left Atlanta. Yeah. But in that time period, and the fact that he did accumulate 434 home runs, 10 Gold Gloves, and they were all consecutive, that alone should put you in the Hall of Fame. And a guy who did it the right way, from all intents and purposes, he did not appear to be, he was one of the steroids guys, because if he was, he couldn't have moved the way he moved, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just, to me, it is an absolute joke. Well, you look at the 2005 season when he hit 51 home runs. 06, he hit 41 home runs. And 07, he dipped down a little bit at 26 home runs. But his combined WAR for that time period, for just 3 years, we're talking about just 3 years, was just over 15. That's pretty remarkable. And then we're not going to talk about the defensive WAR and whatnot, because we're going to kind of run out of time. But
I know. I'm just saying that's where the heart of what makes him a Hall of Famer is right there.
When you were the best that has ever done it at anything, you got to be in the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
Even if he was a light hitting center field, I'd be like, dude, you got to put him in. You got to put him in. I even brought him up today. One of the guys that I kind of, the more and more I look at his numbers, I'm like, Kenny Lofton probably needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And I get it. I get he's a jerk off the field. A lot of people did not like Kenny Lofton. You look at his numbers, and you know how good he was on the base paths, along with his glove. He didn't have the arm that Andrew did, but he could go pick it. These are the types of things that I'm like, I don't understand how do you leave them out, but Harold Baines is in? It's that kind of thing. Like, what are we doing? So you're going to say that over the long haul, you got to count all the numbers that Baines did. Okay. I don't love it, but I'll live with it. But then what are we talking about when we talk about these other guys? I think because Baines kind of went around the league and bounced around quite a bit into some pretty big media markets, I think he became friends with a lot of these guys, and they're voting for the person.
Well, you got to remember, you got to consider with him too, is he was a darling with the media. Sports writers loved him because he was a talkity, always want to talk to the press kind of guy.
Not like Andrew Jones was ever some kind of jerk, or Dale Murphy.
Exactly.
They both had $1 million smiles. Let's get to the last one because I don't want to run out of time here. So here's the number 5 one, and this is the one that Mr. Doug put into the Hall of Fame, and I love this one, man. I love this take. Richard Anthony Allen, better known as Dick Allen, born March 8th, 1942 in Wampum, Pennsylvania, dying December 7th, 2020 at the age of 78, is our 5th inductee into the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame. Dick Allen made his Major League Baseball debut September 3rd, 1963 for the Philadelphia Phillies. He last appeared June 19th, 1977 for the Oakland A's. Dick Allen, a 7-time All-Star from 1965 to 1967, 1970, and 1972 to 1974, was the American League MVP in 1972. He was the National League Rookie of the Year in 1964. A 2-time American League home run leader in 1972 and 1974. The American League RBI leader of 1972 as well. The Philadelphia Phillies retired Allen's number 15 jersey and have placed Dick Allen on the Philadelphia Phillies Wall of Fame. Allen had a career 58.7 WAR, 351 home runs, a lifetime batting average of 292, and 1,119 RBI. Allen finished with a 912 OPS. Allen's career .534 slugging percentage was among his era's highest in an era that has been called the second dead ball era of Major League Baseball. In his 15-year career, Allen played first base, third base, and outfielder, most notably for the Philadelphia Phillies and Chicago White Sox. He was one of the top sluggers in all of Major League Baseball from the mid-1960s to the mid-1970s. Dick Allen played for Philadelphia, St. Louis, the Los Angeles Dodgers, Chicago White Sox, and Oakland Athletics during his career. In Dick Allen's last 2 appearances on the Golden Era Committee ballots in 2015 and 2022, he has fallen 1 vote short each time of the election cycle, needing 12, receiving 11 for 75% of the vote, which is required to qualify through those committees. Baseball historian Bill Jenkinson ranks Dick Allen 4th all-time among long-distance home run hitters, trailing only behind Babe Ruth, Jimmy Fox, and Mickey Mantle. Allen famously swung a 40-ounce bat, just like Babe Ruth, choosing a heavier bat over bat speed, which had become popularized by Ted Williams. Hall of Fame teammate Orlando Cepeda said of Dick Allen, he played with fire in his eyes. And Goose Gossage once said of Allen, I've been around the game a long time, and he is the greatest I've ever seen play in my life, and has been repeatedly pointed to by baseball experts as arguably the greatest player to have not gotten in. Dick Allen comes back up on the Classic Baseball Era Committee vote for December 8th in 2024. But we are done waiting. Please help us welcome Richard Anthony Allen, Dick Allen, as the 5th inductee into the Braves Country Radio Baseball Hall of Fame. So, Doug, I'll let you have the last word on this because we're going to have to get out of here in a few minutes. And the one thing I'll say is he's coming up for vote again on the 8th of this month. I think he gets in. If he doesn't, it's going to be like, what the hell? I mean,
Exactly.
it's been toyed with enough, and it's really ridiculous that they waited this long. But considering the era that he played in, and I know his numbers don't jump off the chart, but people got to understand something. I want to get this in. When you look at his 912 OPS, his 351 home runs, remember that was the second dead ball era. That era was so dominant by the pitchers because of guys like Bob Gibson and whatnot, who Allen was facing on a daily basis, that they had to lower the mound from 15 to 10 inches. And they're talking about lowering. They were at one point, we're talking about lowering again a few years ago. They ended up squashing that. But that's how big of a deal that it was to hit well in that era, and he should be in. What say you before we have to get out of here?
Absolutely should have been in years ago. To give you an example of why he's one of the, in my personal opinion, the greatest power hitter of all time. When he played with the White Sox, they were playing the Tigers in Comiskey Park, the old Comiskey Park, where it's 425 to the center field. He hit a ball that went 529, went out of Comiskey Park into the kids' park across the street where they found the ball. Just to give you an idea, he would hit like that consistently his entire career. Also, he was such a natural leader and such a natural player coach that later on when he retired player, became the batting coach for the Phillies. He is the reason that Mike Schmidt became the third baseman he did, because it's this gentleman that showed him teach him how to re-hit. He was hitting incorrectly, even though he was having a good career. Retaught him how to hit, and Mike Schmidt became the third baseman we all know that's in the Hall of Fame. Gossage, that you just showed a picture of. He was such a natural, brilliant baseball player. Was never a pitcher, Dick Allen. But he taught Goose Gossage how to pitch a baseball.
You know, I think the thing that jumped out at me the most of any of it was the historian Bill Jenkins. People aren't familiar with him. He's a famous historian that ranked him 4th all time. You're talking about the prowess of the home runs that he hit. And when you're in the same sentence as Jimmy Fox, who, if you never looked him up, you got to look him up. That guy had tree trunks for arms. Jimmy Fox, Babe Ruth, everybody knows he hit him a mile, and Mickey Mantle. You're in that same conversation. You're doing it. You're absolutely doing it. And I hope that when is the 8th? I guess that is Sunday. Hopefully we get the announcement Sunday night. And we're going to leave you with the poem that we dropped last year, Where Singles Go to Die, because it is damn time. We're going to get the Hall of Fame votes in this week. We won't get them announced until January. January 21st is the date that they're going to be announced, I believe, which is a Tuesday. I know that 2 days later on the 23rd, if I have those numbers right, we're going to do another one, Once Upon a Pastimes, and we're going to welcome in. I guarantee you they will have left off a couple. So please, y'all, vote on all of our different sites that we got in, including the radio sites where you have the ability to call in and vote. We're going to accumulate all of them. We're going to elect another one in on that Thursday in January. Doug's going to pick another one. I'm going to pick another one. We're going to continue to build this. And the one prerequisite of it is it's got to be people who are not currently in the National Baseball Hall of Fame when we drop this. And I'm just not willing to put steroid users in. Other than that, everything else is on the table. And look, if guys like John Smoltz didn't have such a big problem with the steroids, I probably would have let it go by now. But I had to listen to their side, and I've got to say that that's just one of those things that I'll always I guess I'll die on that hill, as the kids say. And we're going to leave you with Where Singles Go to Die by Andrew Jones. Of Andrew Jones. I guess I wrote it. Andrew Jones. It's about Andrew Jones. That's what I'm trying to say.
To left center. Can Andrew catch up with it? A diving catch ends the game! Hit to deep right center field. Andrew Jones. Oh, good night. That's why that man's a Gold Glover. I mean, that saved 3 runs.
Where Singles Would Go to Die by D.M. McGee, 2024. He'd lean forth an inch, closer and closer. We all came to see 25. Our pitchers were fearless, on the hill with no worries, backed by the greatest center fielder alive. Into the gap? Ha, that's a laugh. Jones was faster than light. Andrew would dart more like an art, the crowd oohing and awing with sighs. Bombs from the plate, speed on the base, a swing and a smile and big fly. But we came to gaze, and were always amazed, where Singles Would Go to Die. Where Singles Would Go to Die by D.M. McGee, 2024.
Eat your heart out, Willie Mays.
Exactly. That's a tougher play than Willie Mays made.
Darn tootin'.